What are some of the most ridiculous ones that actually worked? Let's get started with number 7. Love is blind. Then 72-year-old Angela Nwachukwu got married to 27-year-old CJ Nwachukwu just 3 months after meeting him. But the age difference and short courting period aren't the only red flags in this story of love. You see, Angela lived in Britain and CJ lived in Nigeria. The couple were thousands of miles apart, and Angela had to marry him on the first day they met back in Nigeria. How romantic. The only problem with their rosy marriage now was that the UK Home Office had refused to give CJ a visa to come to the UK. The argument was that he didn't prove that he had enough financial backing. This was despite the fact that Angela had spent over £20,000 on getting him the visa. This may look like a fraudulent relationship to you, and Donald Neaty, Angela's ex-husband, agrees. He says that Angela has always been the gullible type, and that it was clear that CJ just wanted to take advantage of her to leave Nigeria. No. He says he hasn't spoken to Angela in over 18 years and only got wind of her marital adventures with CJ in the papers. With CJ having been refused a visa, what was the next step for the two lovebirds? Well, Angela had decided to work towards securing a student visa for her husband. But it was a hard process for them. Applicants at that time were required to prove that they at least have an annual income of £18,600 between them. They also had to have cash savings of around £16,000. And there are charges of £1,464 for each applicant. Angela insists that the relationship isn't a scam since she admitted that she really didn't have much money and she was upfront about that with CJ from the beginning. We aren't quite sure of what's exactly happened with CJ and Angela since there's no news about them since 2017. Who knows? Maybe they are actually living happily ever after? We'd definitely be a little bit embarrassed that we ever doubted them. Number 6. The Russian Astronaut. An unnamed man scammed a little old Japanese lady by claiming that he was an astronaut who needed money to return to Earth. In a twist that may astound even the most accomplished comedy writers, this ruse worked and the woman ended up sending our astronaut roughly $30,000. The entire story started with Instagram. This astronaut kept posting pictures of random things in space and said that he worked at the International Space Station. Okay, it's a bit left field, but it's not too ridiculous. His victim met him on the app and explained that he could only communicate on it because the astronauts at the space station had limited access to mobile service. He then got her to message him online, a Japanese messaging app. Online, he professed his love and she quickly reciprocated. He told her that he wanted to settle down in Japan and have a long and happy life with her. There was a problem though. He couldn't do that if he didn't leave the station, and to leave the space station, he needed money. You see, astronauts have to actually pay for the cost of their rocket back and also need to pay landing fees to the country they arrive in, and all of that was out of pocket. However, there was some good news. All of this was actually affordable and just cost thousands of dollars, not millions. Our astronaut's victim loved him so much that she decided to send him the money. Over 5 installments, she sent him 4.4 million Japanese yen, which was worth around $30,000 at the time. But even that wasn't enough. The astronaut kept asking for more money because, as you know, rockets are expensive. But this time, the victim had seen enough. She reported him to the police and was informed that she'd fallen victim to a love scam. Number 5. Trust me, I'm a celebrity. Brenton Robert Jarrett made a criminal career out of pretending to be a celebrity. Jarrett used his fake star power to defraud victims and even get some of them to get romantically involved. On one occasion, he said that he was Josh Hitchcock, the grandson of legendary director Alfred Hitchcock. But Alfred Hitchcock doesn't have a grandchild named Josh. He also claimed that he was Johnny Depp's brother and once claimed that he was Skeet Ulrich. While impersonating several celebrities, Robert made sure to take as many liberties as he could. He slept with women who believed he was a real celeb and took freebies from hotels and restaurants while impersonating other people. Jarrett left a trail of victims in his wake, and when he was eventually arrested, there was a lot of evidence to jail him. In court, he claimed that he had only committed his crimes because he was bipolar and was truly sad that his victims had suffered. We bet Skeet Ulrich also probably tried to pretend he was Johnny Depp's brother too. Number 4. The Official Secrets Act. Daryl Flynn defrauded multiple seniors of thousands of dollars by convincing them that she was an undercover police officer. In one of her scams, she convinced Diane Baston to part with her money in the belief she was assisting an important police investigation. So she drove Baston around town and had her take out loans and buy a bunch of electronics. Flynn had such a hold over Baston that she refused to even speak to the actual police for fear of breaching the Official Secrets Act, a policy made up by Flynn as part of her story. It apparently took police quite some time to convince her that they were the genuine article. Flynn's scam was simple. She convinced these seniors that they would be helping in an important police investigation that was investigating banks and managed to pilfer more than £20,000. Flynn used fake IDs to convince the seniors that they were doing the police a great service and continued scamming them to her heart's content. Her current scheme was just another in a long line of frauds where she used respectable positions to take advantage of the elderly. Thankfully, Flynn was soon arrested and made to face the music. She was eventually sentenced to 8 years in the slammer after feigning remorse for the first time ever. Looking at her picture, how could anyone believe her though? She looks like a scary person that lives in the trash can in a park on the bad side of town. Number 3. The $72 million lie. 18-year-old Mohammed Islam told a New York Magazine journalist that he had made $72 million trading stock. It was an incredible story, with one glaring issue. It was a complete lie. In fact, Mohammed hadn't made a single dollar trading stock. But the magazine, who didn't bother to fact-check a teenager claiming to be incredibly wealthy, didn't know this and published an interview with him anyway. The headline said that Mohammed had made $72 million trading stocks during lunch break at school. The story was met with disbelief by everyone, because everyone isn't brain dead. The disbelief was so palpable that the entire case unraveled within just a few days. Before long, Mohammed himself was on CNBC, revealing that his entire claim to fame was fake. He confessed that he had never made a dime from trading and had merely lied about his earnings from trading and investment. But that wasn't what he had told the New York Magazine reporter who spoke to him. He'd played into the whole teenage millionaire trope and had spoken of making $1 million through trading. He even said that some investor was willing to give him $150 million to start a hedge fund. In the defense of the magazine, he'd shown the reporter bank statements showing that he was worth at least 8 figures. These were all pieces of evidence that the magazine needed to base its story on. When the story broke that Mohammed had just been telling an elaborate story, several news organizations picked up on it. So, Mohammed decided to hire a PR firm to manage his reputation. The firm argued that Mohammed wasn't a fraudster and had merely stretched a story and everything had gotten away from him. Since Mohammed didn't really gain a penny from the entire scheme, that may be true. But the fact that Mohammed created evidence to show that he was a millionaire makes us think that he might be a little more guilty of stretching the story than we first thought. So how did this all start if Mohammed had never traded stocks a day in his life? Where did the rumors that he was a millionaire stock trader start? Well, it happens that our man was making simulated trades at a high school investment club. Mohammed's simulated trades were so successful that he made more than $72 million off of them virtually. His numbers were even more impressive than the S&P. But instead of being truthful, he told the New York Magazine journalist that he had made the trades in reality. But people weren't gullible enough to believe his story, and just a little public pressure unraveled his entire tale. And you can almost get how this got away from him, right? You can see how he was like, oh, totally radical, dude. Or whatever kids say today. Oh, that's Gucci or something. When he found out a big magazine thought his trades were real. Then he did the thing we all wish we had the guts to do and said, I wonder how far I can take it. We would have chickened out. Instead, he's like, yeah, bro, I made like 72 million or something, bro. Dope. And then the reporter just eats it up without even questioning it. We're not condoning it. So definitely don't take advantage of some gullible major magazine with some insane story that we'd end up covering because it's so crazy. And don't shout us out while you're doing it just so we do a deep dive on you. Totally don't do that. Number 2, the village idiot. Yeah. Arthur Stimpson believed that he had won the lottery, but he ended up being catastrophically wrong. The entire episode started when Stimpson received an interesting email back in 2007. The email was titled, Attention, Notification of Award. The body of the mail told Stimpson that he had won a massive cash prize in the Spanish lottery. The mail listed a number for him to call to claim his prize. When Stimpson called, he was told that he had won £2.7 million. He was overjoyed at the prospect of this prize this, and the scammers on the other end of the phone were overjoyed at the prospect of defrauding him. Stimson didn't know it yet, but calling that number would be the first in a series of awful decisions that would lead him to lose his home and his family and land in prison. The voice on the other end of the phone told Stimson that while he may have won the lottery, he wasn't going to get his money easily. Apparently, there were things like administration charges and transfer fees regarding taxes that he needed to pay, and Stimson had to pay all these fees to get access to his winnings. Why he didn't think they couldn't just deduct the money from the winnings, we'll never know. He probably realized it when he went to his cell way after the fact. Like he's just about to eat lunch and just freezes and says, "Wait a minute." Anyway, at this point, most people would have thought that, but not Stimson. He wanted to be a millionaire instead of a critical thinker. Before we continue, it's important to understand that Stimson isn't just a random guy. He's a pretty accomplished chartered surveyor, so he's not poor. He didn't need the money as he was relatively wealthy and had the respect of his community. But come on, who seriously wouldn't want an extra 2.7 million pounds? Anyway, Stimson believed the voice and started paying phantom fees for a bounty that had never existed. Total, he paid out $50,000 in fake fees and had nothing to show for it. But the game was only just beginning. Over the next year or so, Stimson would send over $1 million in payments to the scammers. One time, he even put 75,000 pounds in a plastic bag and handed it over to supposed men from the lottery board. The scammers didn't let Stimson rest after taking that first 50,000 pounds. They kept asking for more money in fees and charges, and Stimson didn't see the problem in this, or if he did, he made sure not to mention it anywhere. In due course, Stimson's money ran out and he was forced to start borrowing from neighbors to continue paying. He borrowed 100,000 pounds there, 10,000 pounds here, 50 pounds there, and on until he had borrowed over $1 million to pay the scammers. The most ludicrous thing about this case in particular is that just a few minutes of research on Google would have told Stimson that the lottery wasn't genuine. We mean, besides all of the other shady stuff they had him doing, not making it obvious. Seriously, how did him handing off a bag full of money to some guy like he's buying a ton of contraband not tip him off that something was weird? The bank that the con men used to give the entire scheme legitimacy didn't even exist. A simple Google search would have told Stimson that the so-called Casablanca bank had no digital footprint. Additionally, there was an email claiming that part of the windfall had been deposited at the Madrid branch of the Banca Unicaja Bank. While this bank is real, a Google search would have proven that it was mostly used in fraudulent schemes like this one. Through all this, our man Stimson was determined to get this windfall and paid through his nose for a fake cash prize. Stimson was so convinced of this that he told people that he would pay them 10,000 pounds for every 1,000 pounds he borrowed. He was so certain that the lottery payment would come through any time. You may wonder why he didn't just stop, but it's possible that he believed that he had reached the point of no return. He had simply paid and sacrificed too much to just stop now. He hoped to gamble and pray that the money eventually came through. While it's possible that Stimson did pocket some of the money he was borrowing and use them to pay other debtors, the police believe he gave everything to the scammers. Eventually, Stimson became bankrupt and had to forfeit his house to debt collect. He was arrested and fraud and forgery charges were brought against him. He pled guilty to all of them and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. The scammers were never caught, and since the case has now been closed, it's unlikely that they'll ever face any judgment for defrauding Stimson. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay right here for our past release on how these guys scammed the most gullible crypto investors. Number 1. Internet trolls. Jessica Adelman tried to warn other people about a scam she fell victim to, but was bullied by internet trolls instead. Because the internet only cares about cats. See, that made you happy, didn't it? Jessica had been searching for a flexible online job that would allow her to work from home. But instead of getting a great remote job, she was duped of over 15,000 pounds. The website she saw claimed that people could make money through it by leaving reviews for a large company. But the site also encourages users who signed up to pay money for upgrades. These upgrades came with higher percentages of commission. That was the primary vehicle the site used to scam her. According to Jessica, the site never asked her for payment information, but when she started working, she got a prompt that if she paid 70 pounds, she would make 220 pounds. She was skeptical about the whole thing, but paid the money. Shockingly, she received 220 pounds in return. Unfortunately, the real scam started when Jessica was put under pressure to review package orders, which she had to pay for. Outside that, the website allowed her to pay for an upgrade that would allow her to receive 5 times the commission that she earned. return, but that upgrade cost £7,500. So Jessica paid for it, and halfway through her workday, she received another package order that required her to pay £7,500. Before long, she was given another order that required her to pay £28,000. That's when she noticed that something was off and she had been scammed. But the story somehow got even worse. When Jessica brought the story to TikTok and told the world about it, she received hundreds of bullying comments. The bullies told her that she was gullible for falling for the scam, and many had no empathy for her. Thankfully, it wasn't all bad. Some people made helpful comments and told her how they had fallen for the same scam. It just goes to show how widespread this sort of scam is. Matthew Goach wanted to retire RAF, or rich as, well, we're sure you can figure out what the F stands for. And Goach wanted to make his money through a company built on the backs of sheep. The sheep, in this case, were investors duped into investing their hard-earned money into a Bitcoin mining scam that was too good to be true. Silviu Balaki is a Romanian programmer hired by Goach to help run BitClub Network, or BCN. Goach instructed him to cook the numbers and provide fake proof of mining power, making it seem like their profits were much higher. This was done in order to entice current investors into investing more and getting friends and family to jump in on this fast cash scheme. But at a $600 first-level buy-in, very little was actually going to the mining venture. This was something that most investors did not know. The profits that were being made were forcibly reinvested into the company under the guise of continued investment and continued growth. To Balaki, BCN's dealings sounded like Ponzi scheme fast cash grab. What if investors started looking closer? When the well-known and very illegal scam was pointed out by a very complicit Balaki to his unscrupulous boss, Goach, he shrugged it off. Goach wanted to build this whole model, quote, off of the backs of idiots. Goach then went on and bought a couple islands. Jobadiah, Joby Weeks for BCN's most visible salesman and ardent recruiter, a true believer in BCN and Bitcoin. Joby began honing his sales technique in his teens after being inspired by his mother. Joby began with ventures in bartering trading, up from a $25 guitar to a $1,000 home theater system to selling M&Ms be bought from Costco door to door, even dabbling in selling drugs, but stopped after he was busted for drug smuggling in Costa Rica. Joby's most successful project came from selling for the same company his mother sold for, Manatech, which is a durable supplement company where Joby was clearing $6,000 a month by the age of 19. In his early 20s, Joby started venturing into different markets, from various other MLM projects to dabbling in legalized weed sales to green energy projects. With all this early success and income, Joby was able to finance an extravagant globe-trotting lifestyle with few restrictions or bounds. It was this lifestyle that became part of his successful BCN pitch. Here's me in the Alps. Here I am surfing in Australia. Here I am at the South Pole. And for a small investment, this can be a possibility for you too. For most people, the dream of globe-trotting is reserved for the wealthy elite, not the average Joe, and for a reasonably small investment, who would that not appeal to? Weeks was known to describe himself as coming from a long line of proud Americans. His family fought in the American Revolution. A relative of his was a major in the War of 1812. His great-great-grandfather, John W. Weeks, was a U.S. Senator. His father, Nathaniel Nat Weeks, decided to go against the family tradition of going to Harvard and instead attended Dartmouth, as if going to the less prestigious Ivy League school was a handicap. To his family's credit, however, his dad took a job as a teacher at a private Christian school where the pay wasn't particularly great. His mother was a respiratory therapist who took to various multi-level marketing companies to supplement their modest household income. With Joby's father introducing him to Randian objectivism and his mother's ability to sell and make money, Joby was set up to become a go-getter, self-made millionaire with, albeit, questionable ethics. Matthew Ghosh was involved with the launch of BCN in 2014. After graduating in 2005 from the University of Colorado, Ghosh ended up in MLM selling for Weora, a supplement company similar to Weeks' Manatech. Weora came under fire from a lawsuit in 2012 for false advertisement claims. The company had been selling $50 cures to sick and dying people that contained little more than water and trace amounts of mineral called zeolite when the bottle claimed 2,400 milligrams, a fact Ghosh was most likely aware of. It's little surprise then that a man who had no problem ripping off people desperate for a cure, or even just to feel better, would be involved in a Ponzi scheme that showed remarkable disdain for its investors. The lifestyle created by BCN's founders and top promoters was the major draw of the scheme. They were living the dream of excessive wealth and the ability to travel anywhere at any time. On Joby's website, Weeks Abroad, he would show off all the places he was going and all the cool things he did, never staying in the same place for more than a week or two. His infant daughter, Liberty, visited all 50 states in 42 days, becoming the youngest person ever to do so, and by the time she was a little over a year old, had visited 45 countries. Jacoby's travels were so extensive they attracted documentary filmmaker Corey Rowe, who spent a year following the Weeks' family around on their globe-trotting adventures. Rowe also became a BCN investor, but seems to be rather happy with the experience in his relationship with Joby. Joby also bought a 13-bedroom mansion with an ocean view in Acapulco because he enjoyed the annual Bitcoin conference held there, where he gave presentations. Matthew Ghosh, with his access to hundreds of millions of dollars, formed about 23 shell companies that he used to launder his money. With his wealth, Ghosh was able to buy 2 islands off the coast of Belize, as well as real estate development on the Belize mainland, a condo timeshare in St. Kitts, a beachside mansion in Costa Rica, properties all over the US, a 58-foot yacht, and like Joby, bought his own airplane. The demonstration of wealth had shown what these men did with simple investments, and having them tell you that this could be a reality for you as well would sway anyone. So how did BCN claim to work? Potential investors were shown their dreams and presentations made by promoters like Weeks and told that for a small $600 investment, they could be on their way too. The first $100 was a simple membership fee, with $500 going toward funding the Bitcoin mining operation, the purchase of more equipment to keep the lights on, and so forth. Investors were to be paid in commissions from any daily profits created from the mining operation. Popular terms like passive income were often thrown around to show how easy this was going to be for you, the investor. To make the deal even sweeter, your earnings from the operation were going to be funneled back into the system to get you an even larger share, ultimately creating you even more wealth. The program seemed too good to be true, so to pacify any skeptics, BCN loved claiming to be, quote, the most transparent company in the world. Ghosh was integral in revenue breakdown of BCN, and it went something like this: 40% of investment capital on purchasing the mining equipment, 20% for operating expenses, and 40% was paid out as commissions. So daily earnings were going to pay for the massive amounts of electricity used to run the operation, and the commissions weren't being paid from the profits from mining, but through new investors, the hallmark of a Ponzi scheme. Of course, the minute new people stopped joining, the whole thing collapses. BCN preyed upon investors who were unaware of how the business actually operated. The founders took advantage of investors' dreams of lavish wealth and travel. Ghosh, in online conversation with his programmer, Silvu Balaki, at one point bragged that their clients were the, quote, typical dumb MLM investor. Balaki was often told to cook the books, inflating and deflating earnings when convenient. Ghosh seemed proud of the fact that BCN was able to manipulate the number however they pleased to deceive any potential auditors. Investors were being told that the entirety of their investment was going towards the purchase of mining equipment, wholly unaware that it was only 40%, a fact that Balaki pointed out to Ghosh. He replied that of course the leaders knew that. It was the sheep that didn't. Blogger Ofer Beigel of 99 Bitcoins started looking into BCN in 2016, 3 years before the system began to unravel and federal indictments were handed down. On 99 Bitcoins, Bagel offers in-depth analysis of how Bitcoin works, legitimate places to purchase cryptocurrencies, and advice for the average person so they can get started in a very accessible way. So, when Bagel saw a BCN pitch on YouTube, he quickly noticed that the promoter didn't seem to really understand how mining pools operate and greatly downplayed the risks associated with crypto investments. Bagel began to take a closer look at BCN and found even more suspicious behavior. It was difficult to pin down exactly who was running the company. No names were actually given on their website. The "Who We Are" section was only a vague statement about, quote, a team of entrepreneurs, experts, professionals, network marketers, and programming geeks. The owner of the domain was unlisted, and even direct emails to the website asking who runs the show simply redirected Bagel to the site's vague "About Us" explanation. Bagel began looking at fake testimonials about BCN from other websites, amusingly finding one of the testimonials coming from a phony account with a man whose photo belonged to a convicted rapist, currently serving a life sentence for his crime in Mumbai. The metaphor was a little on the nose. The more Bagel looked, the more vague information and false testimonials he found. Further evidence that BCN is a scam came from Bagel attempting to sign up himself on the website, but was unable to do so without a sponsor. To pursue this, Bagel used the initial promoter he found on YouTube and was quickly directed to pay $99 to join without any idea as to what the money being paid was for or why. BCN's site did offer benefits of signing up, but even these were vague compared to other honest mining operations. There were different levels of membership for different levels of fees, promising greater and greater earnings. But as Bagel did the math, the numbers versus the testimonials found quickly did not add up. Bagel's final conclusion, fantastically written up on his website, was that while there was an actual legitimate mining operation going on, he felt that BCN has too many characteristics that make it a Ponzi scheme, and any potential investor should steer clear. When BCN learned of Bagel's write-up, he was actually contacted by Joby Weeks himself, and after a vigorous point-counterpoint discussion or threats of a lawsuit, Bagel pulled back from directly calling BCN a scam in the title of his article and rephrased it to a more political investment warning. In the spring of 2019, Jobadiah Weeks contacted the IRS over some concerns he was having with taxes he hadn't filed in several years. And Uncle Sam, being Uncle Sam and very interested in any money he may be owed, latched onto the fact that this could be much bigger than Weeks was letting on. The discussion got very serious very quick. To divert attention from himself and BCN, Joby offered to inform on more serious cases within the crypto community, suggesting to be a, quote, Jason Bourne of cryptocurrency. However, the IRS cared very little for Weeks' super spy crypto fantasy pretend game, and instead wanted to know more about BCN. A follow-up meeting was scheduled for that December in Florida to further discuss goings-on at BCN, and when Joby showed up, he was promptly arrested. Once in custody, Weeks refused to cooperate with agents when it came to his finances, which did him little good. In spite of his non-compliance, the investigation dug up foreign bank accounts, high-dollar international wire transfers, and evidence of crypto totaling around $124 million in cold storage. While Joby has always maintained his ignorance of any type of fraud committed by BCN, investigators found evidence that he may have been directing some investors on how to hide their investments, where to send their money, and what to label it as well as being far more aware of the scam than he let on. On the very same day Weeks was arrested, Ghosh was also taken into custody. When agents knocked on his door to serve his warrant, no one answered, but they noticed a figure rush by to a home office through a nearby window. With probable cause, agents broke down the door and found a panicked Ghosh in the entrance to his office, unplugging his hard drives in an attempt to make it more difficult for investigators to access them. Apparently, he thought having to plug them back in would be too complicated and the investigation would just stop. With Ghosh, agents seized over $9 million in assets, various cold storage wallets, and had shown transactions of more than $233 million with $70 million in just a 2-month period. On November 5th, 2020, Joby Weeks pled guilty to conspiracy to sell unregistered securities and tax evasion in connection with the $722 million cryptocurrency scam committed by BCN. He also pled guilty to tax evasion from 2015 to 2018. The conspiracy charge and tax evasion each carry a 5-year maximum prison sentence, as well well as restitution to the victims. Romanian programmer Silviu Balachi was arrested in Germany and on July 9, 2020, pled guilty to conspiring to engage in wire fraud as well as selling unregistered securities for BCN and faces up to 5 years in prison and a fine of $250,000. Balachi is set to be sentenced March 16, 2023. Matthew Ghosh's case is still ongoing as of October 2022, and he has been granted 4 continuancies as the DOJ is still investigating his finances. As per the DOJ, the amount of evidence piling up on the case is massive, including 2 million electronic records, the examination of website servers, and server data, both foreign and domestic, as well as extractions off digital devices. Ghosh rejected a plea deal in 2020 and maintains his innocence. Ghosh's case isn't looking good as the evidence against him piles up. On March 24, 2022, as a third accomplice, Gordon Beckstead pled guilty to laundering money for Ghosh. As a BCN investor, former CPA Beckstead created various shell companies used by Ghosh and others to hide their income. Beckstead also admitted to controlling accounts that were designed to hide the source of Ghosh's income, property, and various assets. In addition, Beckstead helped Ghosh evade his taxes that allowed Ghosh to avoid paying upwards of $20 million in taxes. Beckstead is facing laundering charges that carry up to 20 years in prison and a fine of $500,000, as well as tax evasion charges that carry a maximum of 3 years in prison and a $100,000 fine. He's still awaiting sentencing as of August 16, 2022. Finally, the wizard behind the curtain was arrested. BCN founder and ringleader Russ Medlin, whose identity was kept under wraps, was arrested in Jakarta on June 16, 2020 for unrelated crimes. Medlin had been on the run since BCN unraveled, and indictments were handed down, and his whereabouts were unknown. Most recent updates suggest he's still awaiting trial in Indonesia and is facing up to 15 years in an Indonesian prison. It's unclear if the U.S. will seek extradition of Medlin while he's in Interpol's custody. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section, what's the most ridiculous lie someone has ever said to you?